Hi there. Welcome back for Chapter 12 of Hollow Kingdom. Chapter 11 was Meditations of a Polar Bear. A starving polar bear um, appeared to be looking for her cub. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 12, Hollow Kingdom. Chapter 12, ST. Somewhere alongside the Alaskan Way Viaduct, Seattle, Washington, USA. Guided by my instincts, Dennis and I started to trek south. And all the while, I called out, waiting for a response. I wasn't getting a strong enough signal. Aura was silent. Where was the sprightly song of bird and tree, the voices that keep Aura alive? What had hushed the network? Instinct spoke to me through electric tingles that scurried across my skin. A predator can silence Aura. I didn't allow myself to dwell on what kind. We plodded on, eyes in the sky and a nose on the ground, hunting for movement, attempting to keep one step ahead of the danger we knew would come. Our goal? Keep moving until we made contact on Aura. Using my sharp mofo reasoning, I devised a plan, but only Aura could help me carry it out. We followed the Alaskan Way viaduct south, shaded by the corpse of the 99, a dead freeway, not to be confused with I-5 South, the freeway of death. We heard odd sounds, that savage supersonic call again, how, 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 bouncing off the concrete jungle. The area had a cold, industrial feel. There were pockets of construction, now abandoned, with bright orange warning signs standing guard like ghostly relics. Be prepared to stop, detour, men working. The Forsaken district was full of corners and buildings for things to hide in, and damn it, I was on edge in this steely labyrinth of heebie-jeebies. When we reached King Street, I tried again, calling out to Aura. A question burned in my chest, and someone on Aura had the answer. Hello? Can anyone hear me? The Lego maze of steel and brick and metal stared down silently. I could tell we weren't welcome here. Didn't belong. Why were there no birds around? London plains are tough. Urban trees that tell their stories over the drone of streaking cars and sound like they've been smoking their whole lives. Because they have. Dennis lifted up his black truffle of a nose at grizzled trunks. Their camouflage colors rose to a sulking sky. His droopy eyes scanned their mysterious shaggy crowns. A nervous whine escaped him. I gasped. The London plains were pointing with their branches, pointing north. Three of the trees made a hush noise. Go back, one of them warned. Holy donuts, why? I asked, but didn't get an answer. Are you really talking to us, me and Dennis? Trees are taciturn. You can't force them to do or say anything. Their idea of time is different from that of other beings. Their philosophy is to exist in a steady and deliberate manner, slow as sap, as the spreading of roots. They don't rush anything, unfortunately for me. But we've just been there, I told them. I can't go back. I'm sorry. We have to find the birds to connect to all of Aura, and they aren't back that way for fuck's sake. They didn't respond, just hushed and continued to point. Dennis stuck his nose in a mound of garbage, found half a tennis ball, a chunk of her old life, and lit up like a Christmas tree, bounding around and shaking it with a slobbering melon. Shh! I hissed at him. Simmer down, Dennis. His exuberant joy felt dangerous here, blatant as the bat signal. But Dennis was on cloud nine, might as well have found Cheeto's headquarters or the mofo cure. Convinced I was going to have an embolism, I confiscated the slimy half-ball. Dennis whined, but then conceded. Dennis, we're living in a different world now. This whole situation is a total soup sandwich, and I'm not willing to die over half a tennis ball, I said in a hushed tone. As usual, Dennis took the disappointment pretty well. He's sort of affable that way. I still expected he'd give it one last try, attempt to engage in a game of keep away, chasing me down for what was left of that shitty ball in that ridiculous seizure-inducing yellow. But then his nose caught on to a new scent. Dennis stood erect, staring with his nose so finely tuned, I imagined he was smelling in pictures. Oh no, not again. His snuffer was doggedly fixed, pointing ahead. I followed its aim down the stretch of King Street, smoky asphalt, to a clock tower. The giant clock hands, stagnant and lifeless, appeared to have given up without the mofo's souls. I understood. As we pressed on, Dennis's body posture changed again, his trundle morphing into a careful trot. We were nearing whatever he smelled. The trees we passed were pointing back the way we came. The other way, they hissed. Dennis suddenly startled at a cluster of eyes that materialized next to him. I squawked in shock. Mofos, heads swaying, stretching out their rotting limbs, were inside what looked to have once been an oyster house. The glass windows were, of course, shattered and gaping, but metal bars had been erected to keep the mofos in, or something out. Dennis quickened his pace to pass them, maintaining his focus on the unconscious clock tower ahead. I looked at the writhing mass of mofos, trapped birds in a cage, trying to make sense of the senseless. The sidewalk in front of the abandoned eatery was marked with green spray paint and hasty handwriting, "Never enter, never release them." A severed arm, slim and fish white, lay near the locked gold entrance doors and a dusty happy hour sign. Its bluish wrist held a bracelet of bright emeralds captive. The fingernails, polished purple, clasped a napkin with a crude, hysterically written message scrawled across it. "Tell Peter John Stein I love him. Tell him, but do not use your phone." I looked at the bar sign and lowered my head. There would be no more happy hours. There was nothing on the stretch of King Street to the clock tower but deserted bikes, cars, buses, smashed storefronts, and an uneasiness that made my beak chatter. The concrete fought with flora that burst from its body, green vines taking their sweet time with the conquest. I didn't like the silence one bit. Aura was still off, no signal, a dead zone. We approached the clock tower with reverence and quaking legs. The only movement was a sign below the clock face, hanging by its last corner and swinging gently. It said Amtrak. And then I remembered. Yes, King Street Station, where Big Jim had picked up Tiffany S. from Tinder. And she'd said, "Wow, you're a lot fatter than in your picture." Dennis started pacing again. He was making it pretty clear that we should leave, his zigs and zags painting an ominous tableau. He had found his smell. Then the real crux of the problem reared its molting head again. The part of me that is Crow. I had to look inside, had to know what had happened in the station where mofos had built an incredible machine that moved like a bullet and cut through the countryside like a flaming arrow. A train that went to Edmonds by the water, a place with salted caramel ice cream and art made with hands, and a bookstore that smells like woodland mushrooms, and to Canada, a place where Big Jim said we should never go because their bacon is overhyped bullshit. Dennis whined, a high-pitched plea to stop me from barging ahead in typical Valiant ST fashion. I gave him a sharp nod of reassurance, hopped up to one of the doors, and flat through the missing glass. I perched on an ornate brass light fixture. King Street Station had retained much of the beauty in its bones. Its carved, coffered ceiling, the shine of marble walls, the wood benches for mofos to sit on and wait for the train's shriek. But there were some notable differences since I was last here, meeting Tiffany S. from Tinder. For starters, there was what was left of a mofo. A torso in a fluorescent yellow and orange jacket, squirming on the ground next to the tickets and information counter like a halved worm. The smell of recent death and fear pheromones dangled in the air, heavy as ripe fruit, and I quickly realized that the place was speckled with bones. A femur, a mandible, a smaller other leg bone. Admittedly, my anatomy identification could use some work. A sticky meat log with legs lay near a discarded backpack. I gasped at the grisly scene. It had been some sort of small animal, perhaps a dog, a dachshund maybe, now denuded of its fur and skin. A fresh blood trail smeared itself across the length of the enormous lobby, defiling its large mosaic compass. The crow part of me just couldn't resist, couldn't let it go, couldn't heed Dennis's warning, and I fluttered from one light fixture to another to get a closer look at whose bright, freshly freed blood it was. I could make out a black body on its side. The smearing blood trail stopped underneath it. I dropped down to a bench next to the black body in order to get a closer look. The gorilla lay like a cheese curl, and I could see that most of its back was missing. A deep gurgle released from it, making me jump, and I saw its chest rise, a Herculean effort. I hopped closer, mesmerized by the deeply lined skin of its face, a gentle map, a bright round moon with pleasing features, and lips that could form words and convey a library of expressions. Its bulging brow held history, lessons learned, pockets of sorrow. Its wrinkles told me stories. The white chin whiskers conjured a memory of the spiced, woodsy scent of shaving cream. A fire roared inside me, the urge to preen its sparsely fine fur. I fell deeply in love with its twitching hands, so beautiful and complex, with the wondrous joints and smooth, spongy skin of a mofo, briefly coiling as if to catch a thought, an idea, or to grip the whole world. The heartbreaking wonder of fingers. Then the gorilla opened its eyes that knew a lot of things I wanted to, eyes that the limpid color of fireball whiskey. Those eyes registered me, reflecting back the clear image of an inky bird, a plucky, twig legged investigator I didn't recognize, didn't connect with. The bird looked at me, darting and dauntless with shrewd swagger, so fingerless and feathered, I felt the sudden suffocation of shame. The gorilla sighed, and I watched the vital spark in its eyes take flight. It entered me. I felt it take up residence in my heart. The gorilla, a female, I was sure of it, exhaled for the last time, her bluish, rubbery hand relaxed, body unclenching to send her soul airborne, an upward adventure. I caught my breath and came back to earth. Wake up, ST. Something had mauled the gorilla, and another glance around the station made one thing clear. This was that something's den. It wasn't far away, and it wouldn't be gone for long. A trail of prints perfectly captured its bright red blood on shiny marble, led away from the gorilla's fetal form and across the lobby floor. Big, bad prints that spoke to me in a particularly emphatic way, mainly saying, "Fuck off." I rose into the air and dove through the station, slipping through a glassless window and arrowing down to Dennis, whose tail erupted into air lashings as soon as he saw me. We bolted away from the station. Dennis's paws pounded the pavement, my wings set the wind free, and I called out to Ara for help, calling a name I'd heard before in Ara's song and sigh, while scanning for biting things below. Sadness tugged at my tail feathers. I would have liked to have talked to the gorilla, learned its secrets and stories, and how it ended up in a train station in downtown Seattle, missing the flesh around its spine. I hoped my presence had at least provided a little comfort, because it had done absolutely fuck all to dispel our stereotype as the harbingers of death. Minutes later, we found ourselves at the mecca of Seattle sports fandom, a fishbowl of Emerald City hope, CenturyLink Field. Strange sounds echoed from its deep chasm. I called out. No birds responded. So I told Dennis to lie down under another London plane tree. Three of her branches vehemently pointed north. "Go back," she rumbled. "We can't. Aura is this way. I can feel it in my feathers." The London plane was near a blue trash can with the Seattle Seahawks emblem emblazoned on the side. I was comforted by its familiar Pacific Northwest Coast tribal design, said to be inspired by a Quacka Waka Waka mask. Quacka Waka Waka is my favorite word because it's easy for me to pronounce. A damn sight easier than rural brewery. A nap under the London plains would give Dennis a chance to rest and recover, but leaving him to do recon was getting harder and harder. Any time he was out of my sight, I felt my blood quicken, and I had developed the nervous, derpy head bob of a damned pigeon. It was just me and Dennis in this spiky new world, a tiny but impactful murder, and murders are not something you ever turn your back on. Every time he disappeared into the tall, unruly grass to do his business, I'd hold my breath, unable to inhale until his stupid, hangdog countenance emerged and he did that weird moonwalk grass-kicking ritual. This got pretty dangerous for me at times, considering how he peed in 3-minute streams like a goddamn Clydesdale. I shot up the side of CenturyLink Field and was hit by a dank, putrid smell as I hovered over its center. settling onto a metal edge of the stadium's roof. The scene was shocking. The sky frowned in dark clouds. Pigeons had painted the stadium's partial roof in corrosive white, which had mixed with the rains to form a whole burning acid. But their empty nests lay soaked and abandoned. I wondered who or what had sent them flapping. The stadium had flooded, filled with a swampy green soup. A chorus of frogs harmonized in pulsing bursts like Dennis's squeaker toys. Vines and creepers hung from the stadium's sides, greedily smothering the bleachers where I saw rogue bones and lost limbs, an upturned cooler, a muddy sneaker, part of a ball cap. Weeds and muck and fungus and creaky-legged insects had invaded, and the smell of bat shit stung my beak. Rust was conquering the stadium's metallic structure. The suites collapsed and spilling brick guts onto the bleachers below. A decaying stench rose from the swampy soup, where mofos in algae-slick numbered jerseys bobbed rhythmically in the watery depths. Two helmeted mofos drifted close, then smashed their helmets together, as if gripped by the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs hormones of rutting season. Another mofo, mossy, muscled, and missing both a helmet and a head to protect, smacked its arm against the deep, wet murkiness. One with the number 31 on his back clawed up the bleachers at Red Eyes hunting. Number 16 sprung like a flea to climb the face of the field scoreboard. Jerseyed bodies floated face down. I squinted from a high distance, distinguishing the Reading players as Wilson 3 and Sherman 25. These were Seahawks fans. I bet they'd known they were sick and cureless. They had come here in their jerseys to await their fate, their final choice. Loyal until the end. As a homegrown Seattleite, this caused a throbbing ache to hammer on the chambers of my space needle-shaped heart. A single sign prevailed, Home of the Twelves. The 12th man, meaning the Seahawks football fans, the symbolic 12th player on the field, cheering from the sidelines, loud as a jet plane. The 12th man, proud peacocks who flashed their blues and greens, had roared like animals, and broken sound records and caused false starts and earthquakes and believed their way to Super Bowl victory. Big Jim and I watched every Seahawks game, squawking at the screen, decked in spirited blue and green garb. Nargatha knitted me a nifty Seahawks scarf that I was very proud of, even if Big Jim called me Nerd Bird when I was wearing it. Nargatha, whose family lived on the East Coast and sometimes forgot her because of New York minutes, often got lonely. She would come over during halftime and bring us a chicken pot pie, while reminding Big Jim he needed to eat healthy. I liked how she would prod him in his belly, perhaps the only one who had access to his soft spot. And sometimes we would win, and Big Jim would set off fireworks in the yard, and Dennis would wet himself, and I'd tell the college crows to suck it as they dove for cover because I was a fucking phoenix. Big Jim would have given his right arm to have played here with the other 12s. I was glad he couldn't see what had become of our beautiful, glorious stadium, our team's loyal fans. One could only hope that in days past they had smelled better. I suddenly realized that the croaking had stopped. Something had silenced the frogs. Something or someone. I wasn't sure. Concentric circles rippled from an origin point in the green, and I watched and waited, breath hitched. A sly sliver of dark broke above the water's surface. Please be another mofo, I hoped, tapping my toes in terror. The circles stopped forming, larger ones dissipating and dying out. Wilson 3 and Sherman 25 continued struggling in the water, smashing their helmets together, oblivious of the new silence, the palpable threat. An eruption burst from the flood surface, algae raining down, an enormous mass, a barrel of gray and pink, lunged and fell on top of the two players, jaws clamping down on Wilson 3. The splash sent debris flying, drenching the bleachers in putrid green rain. I called out, but what could I do to stop it? As the giant mammal shook Wilson 3 from side to side, my eyes widened. I recognized the rounded ears, the wide-set marble eyes, the girth of a rubber-skinned beast that took up most of the TV screen when it showed up on National Geographic. A goddamned hippopotamus. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that any of this was anything but horrible, hideous, ambient-induced psychosis. How had he left the confines of his zoo habitat? A gorilla and now a hippopotamus? African animals roaming the city of Seattle? The cogs in my mind began to spin, ideas forming like clusters of clouds. A white streak of movement above me caught my eye, and I looked up to see a solitary gull cruising past. I launched into the air, calling after him, "Hey, hey, hey!" The gull turned his head mid flight to register me. "What's up?" "I'm trying to make contact and I can't hear anything," I told him breathlessly. "I need to follow up on something I heard. I need to know." "Aura or echo?" he asked, tangerine beak slicing through the air. "Aura," I shot back. "Follow me," screeched the gull in that water skimming pitch of theirs as he flapped casually. He was a cool customer, seemingly undisturbed by the thrashing water, the bloody carnage below, the violent demolition by an African predator in a distinctly northwestern football stadium. I flapped hard to catch up and decided not to look down anymore. I tried to shake panicky thoughts about the hippo, an herbivore, I was sure of it, behaving like an insatiable carnivore. It must have been eliminating any suspected threat or competition. Either that or it had made an exception to its vegetarian diet, which was altogether possible. Big Jim went on several Tinder dates with females who were vehemently vegan except for bacon. The gull flew over WAMU Theater in T-Mobile Park, where the Seattle Mariners play, but I didn't look down. Couldn't look down. From the sounds that echoed from below, I knew the scene would be similar to the stadium, and I just couldn't. I didn't need to see to know. I caught up to the gull as a direct result of my crow curiosity disorder. "You said Echo, too. Where would you be taking me if I wanted to get information from Echo?" "Depends on what you want to know." Here his chest filled with air, puffed proud, and for some utterly inexplicable reason, I felt calm. "The bay, the ocean, the sound, wherever you need. I can do it all, crow friend. I can relay current events straight from Echo, too. That's what we do. Us, the terns, sandpipers, kingfishers, cormorants. We are the connection between Echo and Aura. Bridge of sea and sky. It's a beautiful thing. Life, my friend, life is a beautiful thing." "Oh, thank you," I muttered, grateful for the help, as unexpected as it was. I would never again refer to them as schlubby beach pigeons. What he said next roughly translates to, "It's cool, man. Everything's totally cool. You just keep doing what you're meant to be doing. You're flying the good flight. Glaucous winged gulls. Turns out they're unflappable." He flew east from there, and I followed, enjoying the contrails of calm that came off him. It gave me a quiet, panic-free moment to think about the realization I put together from my encounter with the gorilla and hippopotamus in the urban jungle of Seattle. How I now had a plan for Dennis and myself. Despite my new sense of composure, I couldn't let my guard down. I was grateful to the gull, but I still didn't trust other feathers completely. They can be tricksters and bullies, and according to CNN, they might just slap you with a spot of avian flu. The gull touched down in a park with a spectacular view of downtown Seattle, freeways snaking around its periphery, like a twisted noose. I stared at the city's skyline. Oh, how I longed to hear the blare of impatient car horn, the malignant symptoms of road rage. How I longed for the wail of a siren, the roar of an airplane, the tinny voice of a pedestrian crossing. Walk sign is on at all crossings. I'm sure at one point in the park was very well preened with tidy flower beds and John Deere tracks. Now it was choking on an army of sharp-toothed brambles that smothered the land with their spiny talons. I spotted one patch of exposed grass, not as tall as the rest, and walked on it for nostalgia's sake. An earthworm rose from the soil, dramatically postulating about the great change and how she will show no mercy as she takes back what is hers, and that it is time for the great coming, the inevitable hostile takeover of her relentless hands. I ate him. I hopped on top of a sign that said, "Dr. Jose Rizal Park." The glaucous winged gull perched on the roof of the park's barbecue shelter. I examined his perfectly ivory plumage and the shock of gray on his wings, the pale gray of a misty morning. His eyes, bright and yolky, had a calming effect. I had largely ignored the very occasional gull that flew over our house, aside from hurling an artful insult. "Begone, public badger!" or a Creed CD, or threw a Creed CD case at them. It seemed so easy to dismiss them as floating French fry receptacles. I wanted to ask him about Echo, about what it's like to hear the songs of the sea, how it feels to fly great distances. What does it taste like when you are so free that you can follow the sun until it dips down into the ocean? But it was best to keep these wonderlings to myself. Best to keep up barbed wire boundaries and focus on looking after numero uno. Hmm. The trees are talking to you. Never seen that. That's cool. The gull nodded his head vigorously. Go ahead, call from here. Everyone will hear. It's all perfect. He was so mellow that my nictitating membranes licked my eyes lazily. I cleared my throat and called out to Aura, speaking a name that had excited me since I'd first heard it. Whispered through the limbs of trees. Hello! Excuse me, I'm looking for those who know of the one who opens doors. Aura erupted in chatter, songbirds singing, charms of finches relaying my message, a murmuration of starlings taking flight to spread my query, and within some amount of time that I can't be sure of because I still didn't really understand time and none of the clocks worked anymore, I got an answer. That's it. Chapter 12. All right, see you next time.